Ho, 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 and welcome to The Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access for absolutely everybody, elevating, educating, and celebrating all things social care. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe and that like button, hit that bell on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn. Again, apologies to everyone on Facebook. You won't be seeing this right now, but Facebook is not working and we can't figure out why, but we will look into that for the new year. www.thecaringview.co.uk is where you can find all of our episodes, our podcasts, our CQC hub. Can you believe we had 25,000 views of our website alone last year? And most of that was for our CQC documentation. But we've also got a host of other guides, the latest being our AI guide in social care. So go and check out all of that. You can also find our podcast episodes and our chat show episodes, and go and find us on Spotify. This is going to be our last live show of the year, the end of Series 3. Well, Series 3 will end next week with a pre-recorded special episode all around EDI, but this is Mark and I's last show of the year, which is crazy to think about, isn't it, Mark? So obviously, I'm Adam, one of your co-hosts, and Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark, the other co-host. But yeah, you are right. It is absolutely crazy to think that we are, a few days away till Christmas, and then the end of 2023. I don't really know where the last 6 months have gone. They seem to have flown by.
Well, where have the last 3 years gone? This is the end of Series 3, Mark. The end of Series 3. And we're going out with an absolute great conversation all around succession planning. So I want to introduce our guests before we get started. And we're going to go from left down to the bottom. So I'm going to start with Wendy. Wendy, tell us who you are and where you're from.
I'm Wendy Adams. I'm a locality manager working for Skills for Care, and I'm based up in the northeast. So I'm the locality manager for Tyne and Wear, Northumberland and Durham. And I am one of the co-hosts on the Skills for Care podcast, The Care Exchange.
So great to have fellow podcasters with us. So I'm probably going to come to Pia now. That seems natural, Pia.
Yeah, like Wendy, I am a locality manager for Skills for Care. So I'm in the other part of the country. I'm down in Kent Medway. So that's my area. And I'm also the co-host of the Care Exchange podcast for Skills for Care.
Thank you both so much for joining us. And last but not least, the wonderful Tom Owen.
Oh, my. That's made my day, Adam. Thank you. I'm Tom Owen from My Home Life. Currently sitting in my living room. My Home Life is a national initiative that supports positive practice and quality of life in care homes and other care settings. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much for joining us. So if you are watching us tonight and you are in the comments, get your questions to us. We will try and answer them as we go along. I also want to hear tonight your best Christmas cracker jokes. It's our last show of the year, and I think let's spread some Christmas cheer. Tom absolutely loves Christmas and Christmas cracker jokes, so I think this is going to be brilliant. And I will start us off. What do you get when Santa Claus doesn't wear his underpants?
I don't know. Where does he get his underpants?
St. Nicholas. That's what you get when Santa doesn't wear his underpants. St. Nicholas. Give us your best Christmas cracker jokes in the comments. That would be absolutely fab. But we're going to talk succession planning tonight, and I'm going to hand over to Mark to get us started.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I mean, I'm sadly can't follow because I'm useless with jokes, and unless I Google one. So hopefully somebody will come into the comments to save the day. I think succession planning is a really interesting conversation. Obviously, this is one that we had at the Care Show in October, which feels like last year now, and was really well received. And we had a lot of people kind of contact us off the back of that around kind of where to start and kind of the kind of conversations that they could have, both for their teams, but also more so for themselves. Because I think as managers, we quite often think about upskilling our teams and getting kind of ready, but we don't really think about what actually we're going to do within our careers and the direction we want to go. And I think I've just seen more and more around succession planning over the last few weeks pop up. So I think it's a conversation that's really starting to kind of gain attraction in the sector, which is good, because at least then we're thinking about kind of the next generation and who that generation is going to be. So I suppose if I come to Pia, I'll come to you, because I know Skills for Care have done a lot of work around succession planning. I was wondering if you could just kind of break it down into kind of simple terms of what succession planning is. If I can get my words out.
Well, I suppose it's about developing your staff, and Wendy and I were having a bit of a chat about it yesterday when we were sort of kind of discussing coming on in today, and we were talking about it really goes back to retention, isn't it? When you're thinking about it, it's about, you know, if you can't keep your staff, you can't then nobody's going to kind of stay with you, and therefore not going to move on. So I think so I think those two things are really linked. I suppose when I think about my own journey, so I started as a support worker and became a senior support worker, and then an assistant manager, and then a manager, register manager, and then an area manager before joining Skills for Care. And I think for me, it was about people, so individuals that I met along my journey, seeing something in me that I perhaps didn't realise was there myself, and then really sort of picking me out and going, well, Pia, what would you like to do? So first having those conversations. So that can be in supervision, that can be, you know, informal conversations. So having conversations about what's your aspirations, and maybe get the thinking, because sometimes, you know, I know myself when I was a support worker, and I just didn't think that was something that I could do. I just had no kind of, I didn't really think that was something that I was capable of. Or because somebody was able to say to me, well, have you thought about applying for that post? Have you thought about your career in the future? Made me think. And then I started to look outwards and started to say, well, what is there available within the organisation I was working at the time? So I suppose it's about having those conversations. So if that's with either your staff, so if you're a manager with your staff, so also always make sure that those conversations are sort of, even if it's you know, what are your aspirations for this year? It doesn't maybe need to be so long term, but also for yourself, thinking about yourself. You know, what are your plans for the next year, for the next 2 years, and for the next 5 years? And I think what we do for Skills for Care is, so we have, you know, we would have a number of resources. And obviously, we do have a number of resources. We have a succession plan guide, we have a webinar, we have some training, so we succeed. And all those, I think, combined really is about having those conversations and thinking about, well, what would this person like to do? I think just the other thing to say is that doesn't necessarily, and I remember particularly, so when I was a manager, I had a member of staff who I saw some potential in this person. I just thought, I know she could really develop into be a great manager. So a lot of the time, if I was doing something that I felt was going to be essential, I just got her to tag along. So if I had a CQC inspection, if I had the local authority come in and do some sort of kind of visit, I just got her to come along and, you know, see what that's like. So that was almost like training without being training. So I think those kind of things are the things that you can really think about doing without necessarily, because I think sometimes people get a bit scared by, you know, I have big plans for you. You know, that can be a little bit scary having somebody say that to you. So kind of starting out small and kind of saying, well, why don't you come along when I'm going to assess someone, or why don't you come along when I'm having at this meeting, so you can kind of observe, and then maybe afterwards having a bit of reflection, this conversation about how did you think that was there things that you felt I did, you know, well, how would you have dealt with that situation? Those kind of conversations. I think I've probably spoken enough. As you know, I can chat.
No, that's okay. There were some great bits there. I think one thing I'll hand back over to Adam after, and perhaps Adam, I'll come to you actually, that you kind of touched on, it got me thinking about there where you were talking about shadowing and upskilling, is obviously I think there is a worry about people thinking that they're going to upskill somebody and then they're going to take their job, and how we move away from that kind of culture. Because to me, actually, I don't think that's a bad thing. So in my organisation, I say to the lady that I line manage, actually, when I leave or I go up the ladder or wherever I end up going, actually, this is your job, and actually you need to be applying for it, and actually what do you need and those skills and bits and pieces. And I think sometimes some of it's confidence actually that they can do the job, and some of it is actually hands-on learning. But Adam, come to you just kind of for your feedback there, because I presume now that you're operationally, you're obviously looking at succession planning probably a lot more than maybe you were doing in your previous role.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, succession planning, because I think there's questions around what's our current team skill set and what are the current skills that we have in our team, that allows us to see where we need to invest more or where we could invest less in. Because if we've got you know, a number of team members with a current set of skills that we don't need more of. Why are we taking more of them on? But for me, I mean, we've had this conversation a number of times, Mark, haven't we? Where I'm very much of the mindset that I want to support my team to go somewhere else. I want to support my team to leave and get new, fabulous, wonderful jobs. And I think that's really important. There's a lot around the protectiveness of our jobs ourselves. Is someone going to do better than me and then take my job? Well, then focus on your own succession planning and your own growth if that's how you're feeling. But actually, if we're putting all this investment into a team member, what's going to stop them from leaving us? And sometimes the answer is we want them to leave us. We want to be able to support the growth of team members so they can go on, do great jobs. They'll benefit us while they're working for us. And actually, word of mouth is the best sort of marketing. And they will go away and go, oh, do you know what? I'm a nurse, and I'm a nurse because I trained up in this organization and they paid my training and gave me all the experience and it was wonderful. If you want to learn, go there. It's fab. Because while they're with you, they're going to learn, they're going to benefit you. They want those great references. So for me, it's around shifting that mindset of ownership of people, because that's how we've tend to thought about employees and colleagues, is we own them when they're part of our business. You work for me, you work as this team member, but instead of being colleagues and people that were growing and developing and moving elsewhere. So I think there's a cultural mindset that needs to change moving forwards when it comes to succession planning. Now, I know, Tom, there's a lot that my home life has been doing around leadership growth and team growth. Just give us a bit of a background on what it is that your stance on succession planning is, and what are my home life doing around the growth and development of teams?
Yeah, so typically my home life works with sort of groups of 10 to 18 managers, and we meet with them monthly, and we grow a very sort of safe, confidential space that allows people to talk really honestly and bluntly about themselves and their teams. And it's a real privilege, I think, for us to hear. And typically, while we have a number of different ideas, tools, frameworks, generally we sort of have them in our back pocket and allow people to bring up the stuff that they feel that they need to talk about, and then we introduce the sort of ideas that we have. I suppose when I'm listening to this, and I was thinking about, Pierre, your first sort of starting point, which is that managers need to reflect on themselves. You know, it's a great time of year to have this podcast, actually, isn't it? Because I think that Christmas and into January, you'll be having managers starting maybe to start thinking about, right, what am I doing in this sector? And Christmas and January being a very difficult time, typically in terms of pressures and illness, it might make them think about, okay, can I last another year? Because a number of care home managers, you know, are very sort of robust and resilient and love their jobs. And then there are others that will quite often say, well, all managers have a use by date, don't we? You know, there's only so many years you can do this in. But then we don't actually often go then into the next bit of that conversation, which is, okay, who's going to replace me? Who do I need to develop? Which is kind of curious for me, really. And I'm kind of thinking that partly you have managers that are, you know, that stay in the role for a long, long time, and their identity is that role, and they can't necessarily think about the idea of not even being in that role, which then creates a bit of a barrier, I think, to thinking about someone else taking over or someone else developing. You've got those managers that, I mean, it's awful for me to say, and I don't even like to really talk about it, other than you see them every month getting iller and iller from the pressure of the work, and then they suddenly get ill properly and go off long-term sick, in which case there is no succession planning. And then I think then the other bit is about the idea of when you're trying to support people to take on aspects of your role, potentially being your successor, as it were, or to develop into a manager elsewhere. I think the real psychological issue there is around letting go, and that you hear managers all the time talking about how they can't go on holiday because of, you know, what will happen in the care home or the care service, or, you know, when they go on home, they're getting phone calls all the time. When they go on holiday, they're getting phone calls all the time from the staff, and part of that is perhaps about the fact that they haven't developed their staff, their teams, but it's also about the fact that actually it's very hard for them potentially to let go of the control they have. And that actually, as a manager, because the buck sits with you, then actually it's very hard to let go of that sense of control. Fear and control are bedfellows, as it were, and you just have to sort of feel that sense of, if I let someone else take on some of this responsibility, can I cope with that? Can I stomach it? And so I suppose part of my thinking is, okay, how do you help people to get to that point where they can start to first of all think about and reflect on themselves, because most of them don't have that headspace to think, right, let's think about me. And secondly, to think about, okay, what will help me to let go and enable others to take on some of the roles and the responsibilities that I'm holding on to, because they've got too many roles. And I think that if you said to them, wouldn't it be wonderful if someone else took over some of your roles, they'd be going, yes, yes, yes. But on the other side, actually, psychologically, that's very difficult.
You bring up some really good points there, Tom. And we often think of succession planning as growing and developing and taking on a new role, when actually succession planning is just making sure that work gets done for you when you're not there, as well as developing people to grow when you want to go on holiday. And we often say, you know, we are just numbers in a system, we are just machines and cogs in a machine. And it is so true. And if you didn't go into work one day, work would still continue, albeit not at the right capacity, but it will continue. And actually, how do we support our teams to develop their own skills to be able to support us in that? And I know a lot of that comes down to supervisions, and a lot of that comes down to appraisals. And this is a really shameless plug for Skills for Care, but I'm going to come to you, Wendy, quickly. Skills for Care have some really great development tools for team members and appraisals. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think appraisals and supportive supervisions are a key aspect of succession planning. Just talk us through some of the tools that Skills for Care have got and your view around succession planning.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything Tom said. One of the about people needing and not always feeling able to let go. You know, one of the things that I do is I do a lot of sort of sessions and seminars, and the minute you say it's coffee break, it's like some sort of Wild West quick draw. Who can get their phone out of their pocket really quickly because something terrible might have happened in the hour and a half from when you started to the coffee break. And I will always say to people, if that's you need to reflect on what needs to happen in order for me to feel like I could leave that phone in my pocket for the rest of the day and check later. So yeah, and some of that, you're absolutely right, does come down to supervision and to appraisal. And Skills for Care do have a great range of resources. We've got a guide on effective supervision, and I think that's a really fabulous guide to look at for managers, but also anybody in that first line role. Because one of the things that we do in social care, and I think this is probably true for all of us, is we promote people from care worker to senior care worker, team leader, whatever. And we do that very often on the basis of the fact that we're a good care worker. Now, we all know sitting here today that being a good care worker does not give you the skills to do good quality supervision. And one of the things that I really like about Skills for Care's effective supervision guide, for example, is that it talks about the principles of supervision and what good supervision looks like. Because what I find is that often where people do progress into that first line management role, their organisation trains them in the use of the form, not in terms of what to do with the supervision form or what the purpose of a good supervision is. In-house training often is, here's the form, this is how you fill it in. And we all know that that doesn't generate that good reflective supervision. One of the other tools that Skills for Care have that I think is really helpful for those people who are that first line manager is the People Performance Management Toolkit. And this is a resource that I absolutely love. It's really accessible. It's written in very user-friendly language. It talks about the importance of people performance management, how you manage where people are underperforming, but also how you motivate your good performers as well. And it gives some really helpful tips about how to start some of the difficult conversations where if you're a new manager and you have to have your first difficult conversation with somebody because they're repeatedly late, or they're not demonstrating the values and behaviours that you'd want, it gives some really top tips on how you might start those conversations and how you might think through what's going on for that for that person. Because actually, if we don't give people these tools to do this, what happens is we promote people from being a carer to a senior care worker. They have their first difficult conversation with a staff member. It all goes horribly wrong. And people think, well, I don't really want to do this job anymore because, you know, it nobody likes me and it's really difficult. And actually, we're setting them up to fail by asking them to take on tasks like supervision, like appraisal, without necessarily giving them the tools for the job. And I think, you know, the other thing for me when we talk about supervision, succession planning, is often the implication is that is a linear thing and that people are going, you know, up, for want of a better description. And I think a lot of people who do that appraisal need to think much more broadly than that and think, well, actually, an individual's development might involve people moving sideways to develop additional skills. It isn't always about people going for a promotion in terms of money or status. You know, that's what the end result might be, but you might do 3 sideways moves first. It's a bit like a game of chess, isn't it?
No, I think that's a really good point that you've made there about actually moving sideways. And I think we don't necessarily put that on the same pedestal as maybe having a promotion because actually you've gone up a pay grade. And we really should kind of flip that narrative that actually it's a different role and you're doing something. And I think that's probably where actually, in terms of a career pathway for social care, which I know has been spoken about for a long, long time and hasn't really come to any kind of fruition, would really help there, because actually you'd have that as a very visual, actually this is where somebody might start, but actually these are one of the roles. And I think it depends on the size of your organisation. Kind of, I look back over the years of all the small providers I've worked for, and some of those opportunities weren't probably there for a lot of staff or myself as I progressed. Whereas I look at the organisation I'm in now, which is a lot larger, has loads of different corporate departments, so your marketing, your IT, your finance, quality and governance, and actually there's so many areas for room to kind of progress into and move into, and it's just about how you capture that. Jack in the comments says, so I'm going to allow you to do a shameless plug. Wendy will appear here, but Jack has put, there is some funding available to help managers and aspiring managers to prepare for stepping up. The funding is for licensed programs for Skills for Care, and a few endorsed providers can offer it. The courses are Lead to Succeed, Well-Led, Leading Change, Improving Care, and they're all excellent. Here, I can see you've got muted. Do you want to come and talk about them?
Yeah, I just wonder if Jack works for Skills for Care, because it's pretty much what I want to say. Yeah, exactly. They are the ones, and there's a couple of CPD one-day ones as well, which is worth having a look at. So I think, yeah, they're absolutely. So if you are a provider, you can access the workforce development funding, and as Jack says, that means that you can go to selective endorsed provider who bought the license off us. So we have developed all those programs. In fact, Wendy and I used to deliver the Well-Led program a few years ago before they were put on license, and therefore endorsed providers could then purchase them to deliver them. And then with that, you go to your endorsed provider, you pay for the training, and then once you get the certificate, you can then claim the workforce development funding for that. For Lead to Succeed and Well-Led, it's £500 you can claim back, and for the CPD modules, I just mentioned the free CPD modules, it's £125 you can claim per, and they're often around the sort of price where people endorsed providers are charging for them. In order to be able to claim the workforce development funding, you need to have a RSWDS account, and I think when we were on your podcast back in, I don't know when that was, earlier this year, we were talking a bit about that and how that's about uploading your workforce data, and how we really use that data for so many things. We've very recently published our State of Adult Social Care report, and we use all the workforce data. So it's really important to us and important to the sector that we upload our workforce data. But the sort of kind of carrot for us, in terms of getting providers to upload our workforce data, is being able to access that workforce development funding.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And we were actually joined by somebody from Skills for Care called Emma White, who came and joined us around Workforce Development Fund. So I'll find that link and I'll share it into the comments just in case there's anybody that wants to kind of tap into that, but definitely would recommend it.
Mark, can I say something about, there's quite a lot we've covered here, but I was thinking about the supervisions bit, which I really like what Wendy was saying about the supervisions. In my home life, when we're working with groups, we do talk about that, the whole thing around establishing strong, trusting relationships with teams where they can be open and honest and reflect and and just develop that reflective practice so that actually they are then able to be reflective with their service users, the people they're working with. And certainly some top tips I think we're hearing from managers is that quite often you're racing around and then suddenly, oh my God, you've got supervision in 5 minutes, and you have the supervision, but your head is elsewhere, and so you're asking someone questions about how they're doing and reflecting with them, but your brain is elsewhere. And I'm sure we've all had that experience of where someone's talking and you find that your head is floating off to think about finances or the medication box or whatever it might be. And it's about, the top tip I suppose is about ensuring that you have 10 minutes if you can before the supervision to ground yourself, to try and empty your mind, and then use a coaching approach to the supervision. So almost noticing how much of the time of that supervision meeting is you talking and how much is them, and trying your best not to try and cut into the silences when you've asked someone a question, to offer them advice, to say, well, how about this and how about that, but actually to develop that coaching muscle, as it were, so that actually you're asking brilliant questions that allow your team, first of all, to feel really heard and really valued, but also it's really getting them to think in a way that they hadn't thought before. And that stuff can be very, very powerful, because that can bring up all kinds of stuff around how they are feeling now, but also where they want to go in the future. So it's a sort of start. And I think, Wendy, you were sort of talking about new managers and how difficult it is, because I think that's in a way, when you're a new manager, you kind of want to demonstrate to yourself and everyone else that you know what you're talking about. And so there is that risk, isn't there, that you are then going to be talking and talking and talking and talking in someone else's supervision. I think it does take a few years of maturity to be able to step back and go, I don't need to know all of it. I don't need to give all the advice. And actually, what I really need is a team that are really developing. And I know that I can wander off and I can have a day or even a week away from this care setting and know that actually they've really got it and they really know what they're doing, and they're not texting the whole time. So it's that sort of coaching strength that we, I think, try and develop within my home life with managers.
Super important. Sorry, Wendy.
I was just going to say, I think one of the other things that strikes me when we're thinking about good quality supervision and supporting people with that succession planning is some of the we had a couple of guests, and we were lucky enough to have Michael West on the Care Exchange podcast, and we also had a second guest, both of whom were talking about compassionate leadership and about really knowing your staff. And that, I think, is really interesting, isn't it? Is that we spend so much time talking about being really person-centered in terms of the people we support, but we don't apply that same person-centeredness to the staff that we employ. And actually, when we're talking about supervision and we're talking about succession planning, it is that bit about being really person-centered, isn't it? It's about recognizing that every single member of your team will have different aspirations, and that you might well have somebody whose aspiration is to be the next director of social services. But actually, you might also have somebody whose aspiration is just to do the job that they're doing in their local area and make a difference to people's lives. And actually, that bit about succession planning only works if you really, really know your staff well and understand what makes them tick. And that made me think back to those podcasts that we did, where we were talking about compassionate leadership and actually really knowing the people that that you employ?
I mean, there's some really great points being made here, and compassionate leadership is a must. We need to be kind as people. We need to be understanding. We need to know who people are. How can we support team members if we don't know who they are? It's a no-brainer, really, for a lot of people, but it's an alien concept. I mean, I will go to work, and I'm not at work to make friends. I'm at work to do my role, and I have my professional boundaries. Doesn't stop me from being a compassionate person and understanding people and having that working ethic. And Tom, I completely agree. And listening is key. And listening, the hardest part about listening, and I always say this, is keeping your mouth shut. And that's the really difficult part of listening, is not saying anything. Because if we can constantly give them the answers, they're never going to learn, they're never going to grow. And we'll never have a true idea of what our teams and our workforces actually do know and understand. And around the supervisions, about it being an active engagement rather than it being passive. This is how we think you're performing. This is how we think you've done. This is what we think you need to do to improve. Actually, time to reflect. Have they come to the table? Have they been able to prepare? Have they been able to say how they feel and what they feel and their successes? I think some really, really great points. And a lot of this is really good for us for our long-term planning and our long-term growth. How do we develop our team for this summer, this winter, next summer, next winter, and the years coming by? There are times, though, where things happen and they're out of our control, and a manager leaves, or there is a leadership breakdown, or there is a crisis, and we find ourselves all of a sudden going, crumbs. What do we do? We don't have that person sailing and captaining this ship, and we really, really need someone. So what sort of tips do you all have around emergency succession planning? So we've gone into work, and actually the register manager can't come in for whatever reason. It could be something awful and drastic. It could be a personal choice. It could be a choice the organization's had to make. We do have to make referrals to PIPOP from time to time. There may have been something completely drastic that we've had to do as employers, and make a decision to remove someone from that leadership position. How can we go around emergency succession planning without setting ourselves up to fail? I'm going to ask that as an open question. See who's brave enough.
Well, I'll have a go to start with. I don't know if I have the answer to that, actually, Adam. Just going back to the first point, though, I also think that it's probably unfair to say that person-centered care and knowing our staff is alien to the sector. I think that actually there's some really good quality leadership in the sector, and I think you know that too, actually, Adam. But I see your point. But yeah, I mean, in those crisis situations, it depends on the organizational structure, doesn't it? If you have a number of homes in the same provider, then I think there is obviously some good examples of where some managers have come in from another setting and come and supported that home. That sometimes works. Sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge because the staff, are they going to receive that person well? Is it a different culture? A time of instability, you've got to almost come in and recognize that you're in somebody else's home, as it were. If you come in as a manager from another care setting and you're enforcing your own culture on one that has been really steady and consistent and a positive one, then at a time when the staff are also have lost their leader, that can create all kinds of ripples. One of the challenges, I think, for the sort of smaller homes where they are on their own is about what do you do in those situations. And I think we hear that quite a lot when people suddenly get very, very ill and have to leave. I've had examples of managers where they've got, I suppose it's probably the same with the registered managers network, Pia and Wendy, but certainly with My Home Life, where managers within our My Home Life networks, they're all on WhatsApp with each other and they're all chatting away, and they will help, and they will work out and understand, because they know each other very well by that stage, what kind of help that needs to be. I mean, it's a great opportunity for someone to come in and work with an individual within that home that has the potential to take on aspects of that manager role. And it's I think quite a tricky balance, isn't it, about wanting to go in, and it's a bit like sometimes when you have care homes that are in trouble and you get someone that comes in and they try and correct it. What they actually do is they disempower all the team, because they're saying, right, I'm here to make everything better. And that's the worst thing you can do in lots of ways, because you can't get any long-term sort of sustainability of it. So it's quite a tricky thing for a new manager to come into those environments. I'm not sure
I
if I've
feel
got anything else to
personally
say.
attacked now because I've joined as a quality and compliance manager for an organisation. I needed some support. I was like, "Are you attacking me?" No, you're totally right though. And my approach to everything has been, I am just a calculator in your pencil case. That's all I am. I am just a tool to be used to help support the growth of the team. I don't have all the answers. You have the answers, you have the capability, and you have the power to make that change. I'm just here to help guide and support, and I'm not here to fix it. You will fix it yourselves, and you will grow yourselves, and you will develop yourselves. You just need that little extra support. There just needs to be that little extra support within the team because there's a deficit that's obviously there. And our teams are growing and prospering, and it's fantastic and it's wonderful to see. And I'm over the moon by it all. Pia, and I do know there are compassionate leaders out there. I just love being contentious. Pia, Wendy, anything that you would like to add?
Yes, I've been in that situation a couple of times. You kind of get handed the keys and off you go. You kind of think, oh my God. I think the thing with those kind of situations is about having a plan for support. So if there's an emergency and somebody are having to, I don't know, change roles very quickly, having to be either promoted or step up on a temporary basis, some sort of where it's somebody's had to leave or off for a long period of time, and then maybe a deputy are having to step up and they didn't really feel ready. It's about having the support around. So are there aspects of the roles that can be shared out? So it's not just everything falls on one person's shoulder, because that can be exceptionally scary. Having regular ways for that person to feel supported, and you talked about registered manager networks, and obviously we have those, and that most have a WhatsApp group that goes alongside. So having ways of being able to ask those kind of, oh my God, I don't really know what to do with that. So there's a mechanism in place. And also for sort of kind of more senior managers to have regular opportunities to talk to that person, so they don't feel like, it's all on me. If I fail on this, it's all on my shoulders. That this is a team effort. It's not just you are the person who happens to be holding the keys, but this is a team effort, and other people are equally responsible. And you've done us a great favour for stepping up, and we're really grateful for that. So having those kind of conversations and making sure that person feels have opportunities to kind of talk to somebody about what that is, if that's in a supervision relationship, or maybe having some sort of mentoring is really helpful. Skills for Care does have a mentoring scheme. So again, if you are in that situation, having an opportunity to talk to somebody who perhaps doesn't work for you or to work with you is a really great way. Before I joined Skills for Care, I was trained as a mentor by Skills for Care. And I felt, I've been at that point, I've been supervising staff for over 15 years and thought I knew exactly what this was going to be, just a little bit different from supervision. It was so different. And as a mentor, I absolutely loved it because I had a completely different conversations. And as you were saying, Tom, about being quiet and getting that person to come up with solutions was really, really interesting. And I think if you are struggling, finding out somebody either through Skills Care or through your network that can be your listening person, that haven't got a line manager role for you, that haven't got involvement with your service, so are completely new to that, you can have those really honest conversations, I think is really, really important. Wendy, I don't know if you've got anything else to add.
No, I think for me, it's very much about thinking about how you can link into that support. And I think one of the advantages of the Skills for Care registered manager networks or the Facebook page is actually that even if you're part of a big organisation, that's then getting support from other registered managers or other managers outside of your own organisation, because sometimes that can be really, really helpful. Often people will say, well, do I need to come to the registered manager network because I'm part of a big organisation and I meet with the other registered managers in my company? And then they come along to the registered manager network and say, oh, that was really helpful, because actually seeing how other organisations work gives me a different perspective. Or actually, the thing that comes out more often than that about our registered manager networks is people say, it's actually just reassuring to know that everybody else has the same worries, anxieties and doubts as I do. And I think for that manager that's been plunged into that unexpected role, actually going along, meeting with a group of like-minded managers and realizing that some of them who've been in their roles for a very long time are still battling the same issues and facing the same challenges and often feel like you do is helpful.
There's nothing more reassuring than being at a conference and being afraid to ask a question for fear of looking stupid, and someone asking that exact question, and you can sit there and go, oh, I'm not on my own. And then you see the hands start coming up, then like, oh, I totally relate to that. What about this? You then get the odd person who asks a question that you all start looking at each other and going, oh, God, they really need the support. But the majority of people get that confidence then to be going, oh, I'm not on my own. I'm really, really not on my own. And it's just so lovely to see that camaraderie come together. Sorry, Mark, I saw you on mute.
No, that's okay. I think what we're hearing is that communication is really key, whether that's within your own organisation, but also outside of your organisation. And I think that listening to you there talking about actually what other providers and managers are going through, and I'm sure Tom will agree, when I was on my home life, actually, the cohort I was in, actually, it was all the same issues. Even though we were across very different services, learning disability, older people, actually the issues were still the same. It was always rotas, always staff, always that managing people side of things, and actually how we upskill people and utilise that. We've had a question come in, which I'll bring up on the screen from Charles. We'd be interested to hear the panel talk about having individuals in your team that are capable of promotion, but you don't have any roles for them currently. Now, we touched on this very briefly kind of earlier when I spoke about, obviously, when I compared kind of the larger organisation I work for now with the smaller ones that I used to work for. Open it up to all of you kind of for thoughts. I mean, my personal would be that actually, if you've given them the skills and the tools to be able to do that job, you should be now encouraging them to fly that nest and go and do it alone and go and, you know, go for the job that they're capable of doing. And we shouldn't be scared of saying, actually, we're losing people because of that. And I think, you know, in my organisation, there's only so many senior staff, trusted assessors that we can have. And then there's so many local business managers, we call them, and kind of as you go up the career ladder, there's less roles, but actually we know that people will leave to go somewhere else. But actually I feel confident that actually if you've given somebody everything in their toolkit to go and do that job, then actually they'll go do it well. And actually you shouldn't be afraid that actually they're going to go and work for a competitor down the road, because actually they'll always remember the good things that you did for them, which is what you said about earlier. And actually then if you do have a role that does become available, either on the same level or higher up or a different pay grade or whatever it might be, you're more likely to attract that person back in the long run because they'll remember actually the support that you've given them. Wendy, Pia, Tom, any thoughts from you on this one?
I suppose for me, it comes back to what I was saying about really knowing your staff, because I think the question that I would ask is, what is it that the person wants? Because actually, if what the person wants is a physical promotion to a job with, and absolutely what you're saying might be entirely right. And I think there is an element of difficult as it is, we need to get much better at seeing social care as a thing, as opposed to individual organisations. And I think we're not great at being able to.
I was just messaging Adam in the background saying, is that Wendy's connection or is that mine? And I left her going because I thought we were kind of getting through the...
I think that Wendy made some really good points there. And my sort of sense, though, is, you know, there's the sort of two aspects to this. One is that if you, let's be really honest here, if you're a manager and you've got a shit hot senior team leader or whatever it is, you don't want them to move on, because actually they are like gold dust, right? You want them. And so your heart is that you want to keep them. And so it's difficult to then think, right, how can we let them go? So I can see the philosophy of that, but I think in reality, I'm thinking about my team. I can't bear the idea of them leaving, but at the same time, I know I need to be developing them. I think if we had, and this is a bit of a daydream, because I know that there isn't funding, but if you think about the complexity of the roles that people play within the care home sector, and if you were to start again and think about, right, how do we develop the career pathway within care? Actually, there should be lots and lots of specialisms out there that are potentially below the manager or alongside the manager, but there should be more places for people who are really good, really skilled, have certain skills or certain areas where they should be able to move into, whether it's a dementia specialism or whatever it might be. They should be there. Now they're not at the moment, which makes it very, very difficult. I think that clearly we want to try and find ways to help people to develop what part of our heart wants to keep them with us. My sense is a lot of care team members are so emotionally connected with the service users, with their teams, with their manager, that it's quite hard for them to move away. In fact, we've heard a number of managers saying that we let that person go, they wanted to move on, but they've come back because what they really value is their career, but they also really value what they get from being part of that service in terms of the really strong relationships and the trust, the emotional support they're getting from managers. So it's not an easy answer to, I didn't answer your question really, Adam, did it? But it's sort of, I suppose I want to communicate how it is really difficult for managers to be able to sort of really try and encourage their teams to move on when actually really good people are very hard to find.
Absolutely. Anything from you, Pia, and then we'll come back to Wendy.
Well, I always, when I have difficult questions like that thrown at me, I'm trying to imagine myself sitting back at my desk as a register manager and what I did when I had members of staff who were absolutely capable of doing things and roles, but I didn't have a role for them to go to. And I suppose it is a little bit what you were saying, Mark, is about having those conversations. What is, and when you were saying, what is it you're wanting, and are there things that I can suppose get out of you before you leave. I remember once I had it was a graduate who came in a fairly short space of time, a few months, and was clearly not going to stay with me for very long because she had far better skills and was clearly destined to fly high. But I got her to do some stuff that I didn't really have time for, but that really developed her skills. I got her to lead a particular project. So rather than me thinking, I'm going to try and keep her, I just really kind of spoke to her and found out what her aspirations. She was really wanted to work in project management. So I got her to lead a project within my team, which really just got her to, she really, really went flying with it in a very short space of time. She made a huge impact for the people that she was supporting and the staff. And so I suppose it was. I know exactly what we're saying. You don't want to lose them because they're so good. But even if you trying to hold on to them, they're going to leave eventually. So it's better to try and have those conversations and try and see what's best for you and me. What can I get you to develop, and therefore also be helpful for me as a service. So I suppose that's my answer to Charles. Is if you don't have a role for a person, it is to have those conversations and maybe try to get them to do some additional stuff for you while they are developing their skills in order for them to kind of long-term leave.
Thank you very much. And listening to you there, talking about actually that project role and bits and pieces, is there something in your organisation that you can make a role doing? And I mean, now might be the perfect time, actually, with the new framework. Could they take the lead on the framework and rolling that out to the organisation? Could they be in charge of capturing the evidence for the quality statements? Kind of looking at what the future of the organisation might be. But yeah, Wendy, was there anything? We did capture most of it, but was there anything else?
No, I mean, I think for me, it's if you try and hold on to somebody beyond the point at which they're feeling satisfied, they leave in that frame of mind. I think if they leave and you're encouraging and supporting them to move on to new opportunities, there's always the chance that they will come back. because they've left with a positive feeling about your organisation. And I think for all of us, we can look back over our work careers and think there are organisations that I would go back and work for in a heartbeat, because I felt valued, I felt supported, I felt encouraged. And I think there's organisations that retrospectively we'd look at and think, I would never go back and work there because I didn't feel like they valued and encouraged me and developed me. And I think that for me is one of the things. If people are going to leave you anyway, then have them leave thinking, I'd go back there in a heartbeat.
Mm.
And that's, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? It's, what have you got in your organization that is available? Have you got something that isn't available? Is this an opportunity for you to look at your business and go, what more do we want to do? And will this person help us grow the business into a different direction? You know, do we want to add a different type of service? Do we want to have a look at adding on an additional type of service? You know, there's so much that you could possibly do to utilize that person to grow your business. But like I said right at the beginning of the show, sometimes the best option is to let them go. And it's really, really difficult, but I'm really keen. I mean, I love seeing the people that I've worked with over the years who are now running their own services and doing their own things, and some have got their own businesses. And it's wonderful to know that we've not held them back, and it's really difficult. And this is probably where my view of succession planning comes in, is identifying those team members early on who are going to want to develop and go somewhere else. And actually, how do we develop and bring other team members in to replace them when they're ready to go? You know, because once they're ready to go, let them go. And you've already got the perfect replacement trained up and ready to be there, because that's what they've grown and developed to be. I think it's a difficult one, Charles. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on whether you want to lose them or not. It depends on whether you can take them in a different direction, or it depends on whether you can coach them and support them to leave and to go to a different organization. All very, very difficult decisions. And whether it leaves you with a deficit or not, I suppose is only something you will know. So just on that then, and I know we've touched on this slightly throughout the night around succession planning to our teams, and we've not got long left, but just on the back of that question, how do we identify, what are the ways that we identify what skills we've got in our team, and how can we identify the skills we don't have in our team? What are some of the tips we should be looking at to develop our teams further and identify where we may have gaps or we may have overstocking of certain skills?
Shall I go first on that one? I suppose my starting point, thinking about the managers that I'm working with and the team are working with, is asking them what aspects of their role they really don't like and really struggle with. And I've heard people say, I'm not sure if I completely agree with this, but that a manager and a deputy, you've got to have that complement of the relationship-centered approach, someone who's brilliant with people, and then those people that are great with systems and processes. I'm not completely convinced that they have to be very separate, but you need to be looking at what that manager is just brilliant at, what they bring. And that means, therefore, they're then thinking about, right, what is the bit that's missing, or the bit that I don't like that I can let go of. And that's where then you're trying to identify within the team, right, who could take that on. I suppose going back to, I think it was Wendy, your point around really getting to know your team. There are probably plenty of tools out there, but I think it is about a culture of opening up conversations about how we are, what do we feel proud of in this place, what makes us happy in our work, or what are the struggles we're having, and having those meetings that are with our teams that are high quality, really well facilitated, so that actually you're giving opportunities for people to really share openly about the things that they really like, the things that they don't like, and then that itself can then feed into individual supervisions. So that sort of sense of getting to know them as a human being. Yes, there may be tools, but I don't think the tools replace those kind of high quality conversations, personally.
Thank you very much. Wendy, I can see you've unmuted.
I think one of the key things for me is about thinking about, where's your vision? Where does this service want to be in a year's time? And if we get there, What skills and knowledge do we need people to have that they don't have now? And I think that's really about getting people to think about that journey. Where am I now? Where do I need to be in a year's time? Because the service will move. The service that you're managing today will not be the service that you're managing in a year's time, because social care changes, the people you're supporting changes. So how do we constantly have that in our head? Because if we haven't got that clarity about where we're aiming to get to, it's like starting off in a car journey without a destination. How do we know that we've got everything we need to get there if we don't know where it is that we're going? And all too often I see people's appraisals when they're starting to look at what are your training needs, and the conversation goes along the lines of, oh, there's these courses, is there anything you'd like to do? And actually, that's not about how we develop people. We want to be thinking about, well, what is it that we need them to be able to do to improve the quality of the care and support? And how do we help them to get there? And I think unless we've got that vision, whether that's a vision for the service, whether it's a vision of how they're going to support a particular individual, we need to know where we're aiming for people to get to.
Thank you very much. Pia?
Not sure I could say much more. It's just what I was going to say. I'd say as well was about having a vision and being able to think about what is it that we're going to need. And I think the other thing to think about is so many things outside of your individual services they're changing. So digital, for instance. Those skills are changing all the times in terms of, I know you did the webinar or podcast recently around AI. There's so many things changing externally, so looking outwards as well about what are the things that's happening outside in the sector that I need to know about, and therefore that's going to impact on my service. And definitely digital skills we know is going to impact on every service, because those who are early adopters who are already doing it, they're going to be moving on to the next level. Those services where digital is not part of their service, they're going to have to change because society and the sector is changing so much.
Thank you very much. Completely agree with everything that all of you have said. I think the only thing for me is looking at kind of what your current staff's workload and what work-life balance is, which is always hard if you don't have a budget to recruit somebody else, but actually utilising those exit interviews and seeing what the feedback is, and are actually staff leaving because they're so burnt out and overpressured that actually there's then a business case there to employ 2 people to do that role and share that load. But nothing else from me, but just thinking then when you said about learning from other sectors and looking forward at kind of what's coming outside of the sector, I suppose with Charles' question earlier around kind of what else, AI is a big thing. Is there something tech that you can introduce into your organisation? Probably the wrong thing to advise to Charles because he's already on the AI game. But yeah, is there something that actually you can build on and develop? Adam, final tip, thought from you, and then I'll let you close out for the evening.
So I totally disagree with everything everyone said. No, I'm joking. It's all perfect advice, and I'm taking mental notes. Luckily, I can go back and watch this. And if you are watching this and you think, oh, I really missed that, I must go back. We are on YouTube constantly, and you can go back and watch all of our episodes. So don't worry about that. But I think for me, I would come from a viewpoint of, if I didn't come into work for a week, what wouldn't get done? What wouldn't get done if I wasn't there? And I'd work backwards. Right, well, this wouldn't get done, this wouldn't get done, this wouldn't get done, this wouldn't get done. So who could do that? Right, these people could do that. If they weren't in and they weren't doing what I currently do, but they do what they currently do, what wouldn't get done if they weren't in? And I'd go, right, so who in the team could do the stuff that they do? And then I'd work backwards. So the people who would be supporting them if they weren't there, what happened if they weren't there? What's the stuff that they do that wouldn't get done if they weren't there? And I'd look at the work that would automatically stop because other people aren't able to, or haven't had the training to, or don't have the skills to, or the experience to be able to do that. And I'd start looking at those deficits backwards. If I'm not there, what do people need to do? if they're not there, what do people need to do? If they're not there, what do people need to do? And actually, succession planning back and forth. Is there something that I can do workload-wise if people below me, for want of a better phrase, aren't in, without overly affecting my workload? And I think once we start doing that, registered managers start seeing their workload dissipate because they then learn to delegate. And then when you can start delegating and other people start doing it, you see your workload decreasing, job satisfaction improving, and you move more to that general oversight rather than general doing. And you've got that general oversight of everything you're doing rather than just doing everything yourself. So for me, my top tip would just be have a look at what you do. And if you're not there, what needs to continue? Because when you go on a holiday, you do not want to come back and go, I've got 2 weeks work to do in one day before I catch up on everything else. You want to come back and go, I've got some emergencies I need to deal with that others haven't been able to do, regulatory stuff potentially, but everything else has been done whilst I'm not there because I've trained the team, they know what to do, I've given them the guidance and the support, and all I need to do is check it when I come back. So have a look at those sort of things, and I would say just put actions and plans and training in place to be able to support that. Probably totally wrong advice, and you're probably all going to go.
Very wise, Adam. Very wise.
But I think that's how I would approach it.
We had somebody on the podcast last series who was talking exactly about that, how they'd literally looked at all their roles and and they found things that only one person could do, and that's really, that he was talking about this in terms of emergency planning. But it's the same thing, isn't it? If there's only one person that can do that one thing, that's not good, is it? Because you could anything could happen to you, and you may not be at work. So more than one person need to be able to do every single task in your organisation.
It's that old adage, isn't it? Putting all your eggs in one basket or something like that. If you eat eggs or vegan eggs or whatever it might be, it's, don't put all your bets on one horse. Something like that. There's probably a saying in there somewhere. Look, I've absolutely loved tonight. It's been a really, really great show. Really, really thought-provoking. This is our last show before the end of the year. It's our last live show. We are going to have a pre-record that goes out next week, but it means that we're not doing a big Christmas special this year. Everyone's incredibly busy this year. We're sort of back to a normality of life. So I'm going to throw everyone a curveball, and I will start because we discussed this at the beginning of the show. Have we all thought about our New Year's resolutions for 2024, and how are we going to stick to them? So just nice and quick. So for those who don't know, I gave up drinking in August this year, and it wasn't a New Year's resolution. It's just something I wanted to do, and it's been fantastic, and I've absolutely loved it. And it's kick-started like this weird health kick inside of me. So my New Year's resolution, starting January 1st, is I'm giving up all added sugar. Now, do not come around me for the first couple of weeks of January because I probably will not be that pleasant. But I am giving up all added sugar, which is going to be crazy, and I'm going to see how long I can stick with it. But I'm hoping pretty much for the foreseeable future. Mark, have you got any crazy New Year's resolutions that you are going to try?
I won't lie, I have not thought about it yet. Because I'm one of these people that will set a resolution because I really want to achieve it. And I'm really proud that all the ones that I've set kind of over the last few years, I have achieved. But no, I haven't thought about it yet. I think for me, it will probably be something about giving back to a charity or something like that. And trying to make a difference in the local space. So, which is something that pre-COVID I did a lot of, and post-COVID I haven't done as much as I'd like to do. So it's probably what I'll focus on, but whether it'll be my resolution or not, I don't know.
That's a very miscongeniality answer, that, man. I expect you to finish with world peace. Pia, what's going to be your resolution, do you think?
I don't know. I usually try and have a resolution that is about adding something rather than taking something away. But a bit like Mark, I haven't really had a chance to really think about it, but it will be probably about doing something fun. But I don't know what that is yet. Maybe that's just it. Doing something fun every week, because I think life, you work, and as much as I love working for Skills for Care, you need to have something to look forward to all the time, don't you? Really.
I might steal that, actually. I might just keep the sugar in and just do something fun every week. Wendy, have you given it some thought yet?
Oh, no, I hadn't. But now you've made me think about it. I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? So you've now given me a bit of a crisis. I feel like what I might do is, did you watch the reality program about Wim Hof and his cold water?
Oh God, yes.
Yes. He did a celebrity program last year, but he's written a book about the benefits of sort of cold water immersion. And I did it about 18 months ago. I started doing the whole, when I had a shower, turn the shower onto cold for the last 2 minutes. And it's meant to be really, really good for your well-being. And I did it for a while, and then I got out of the habit of doing it. And it's like all of these things, isn't it? You get out the habit and you stop doing it, and getting started is hard. So now you've made me think about it, Adam. I feel like I might get back to that because it's really good for your well-being. It's meant to be really good for your mental health.
Well, if you're ever in my neck of the woods in Fleetwood, my partner's a holistic therapist, and they've got their own holistic centre, and they actually have an ice plunge pool where it's full of ice and cold water, and you submerge yourself. I've not done it yet, but if you're ever in Fleetwood, come and check him out, because they do. And they've also got an outdoor infrared sauna which you can go and warm up in afterwards.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
So maybe something for you to try out, Wendy.
Thank you very much. That's a very kind offer. That's a very kind offer, I think.
Tom, what about yourself?
I was just going to say, my sister winter bathes in Denmark in the snow. You know, so that's your aspiration, Wendy, is to actually go in the sea. She's like winter bathing every morning at 6 o'clock.
So there's a whole barrage of people who think it's a good idea. So you know,
you need to do this. I'm going to hold
George
to
Coxon, an avid friend of ours in social care, he actually goes swimming in the ocean quite close to him, and I'm pretty sure he does it Christmas Day. Now, George, I don't think you are watching, but I must get in touch and find out whether George does do it on Christmas Day. But he goes swimming in his local sea quite regularly.
Isn't it a tradition to do it on Boxing Day?
Boxing Day, yeah.
Oh, mad.
My tradition on Boxing Day is just to stay in bed and do nothing.
Yeah.
Each to their own.
Yeah. Tom, what about yourself? Are you going to go skinny dipping in the ice cold sea?
I think probably staying in bed and doing nothing is my New Year's resolution. That sounds fantastic. I mean, to be honest, I'm not very good at rules, and I don't like setting myself things like this because, I just want to sort of tell myself, no, I'm not going to do it. I am going to smoke more cigarettes and drink more and eat more chocolate. That's what I want to come back to. But I happen to be going to Sri Lanka for a couple of weeks at the end of January. So I imagine that sitting in the hill stations, being really chilled, something might come to mind. I might leave it till then.
It might be the start of a newfound way of life for you. Just
indeed,
sitting and doing
I might never come back.
Yes. Oh no, come back. My whole life.
I want to come back. I want to come back.
I'd like to point out, Adam, that what I actually said my resolution was turning the shower onto cold, not skinny dipping anyway. I feel that was creative license.
That's on record now.
It's still technically skinny dipping, isn't it? In a pool, in a shower.
Well, I suppose so.
Guys, I need to go and pick up my son. So I didn't know we were going to carry on this long. So I'll have to go.
No, honestly. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have carried on longer than normal. If you can hear that, it's my doormat screaming Christmas carols at me. I've had to bring it inside because it's driving my neighbours mad. This has been The Caring View, www.thecaringview.co.uk. Please tune in next week for our pre-record on equality, diversity and inclusion. And yes, have a lovely Christmas, everyone. Please stay safe. Remember, it's about people, not presents. Let's just have a lovely time this year. And let's just spend it with the people that we love and supporting those who might not have that many people around them. But thank you all to everyone who has supported us over the year. We will be back in the new year with Series 4. We've got a special pre-record coming out at the beginning of January, but we will be back towards the end of January with a jam-packed live schedule. So please take care. Merry Christmas and thank you, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody.